5,000 years ago, a simple innovation transformed the ancient world. It was such a versatile and valuable novelty that it generated wealth on a global scale, boosted international trade, and ushered in the development of civilizations. Around the year 3000 before the current era, this invention was bronze, kick-starting a whole new era. We saw in our previous episode, for which I leave you a link above, what happened in the beginning of the Bronze Age, from the year 3200 to the year 1550 before our era. A period in which civilizations arose, spread, and prospered in Mesopotamia, in Egypt, in the Indus Valley, in Anatolia, and in Greece. We will now look at the late Bronze Age period and explore everything that happened from the year 1550 to the collapse of the Bronze Age in the year 1200 before our era. A period in which links between societies are established on a much broader scale, by sea and by land. The Minoans and Mycenaeans, the heroes of the Homeric legend, built their palaces in Crete, Greece, and the Aegean Islands. Pharaoh Ramses II, he would reign during this period, becoming the most powerful pharaoh in Egypt. Enemies of Egypt, Hittite warriors, dominated what is now Turkey and northern Syria. While the Canaanites, merchants on the Great Trade Route, controlled what would become the Holy Land, Israel, Lebanon, and Jordan. It was a world made up of many kingdoms, totally different in design and culture, but when archaeologists began excavating these territories, in the 1930s, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. They began to see that the destruction of most of the towns, palaces, and major cities had in all cases occurred in the years around the 1200 before the current era. In this 50-year period, the Mycenaeans are gone, the Minoans are gone, the Hittites are gone, the Canaanites are largely gone, and Egypt is so weakened that it will never be the same again. They were the most important peoples in the world, and they all turned to dust at the same time, within a generation or two. What follows from there will be given an ominous name, the Dark Ages. Civilization as we know it disappears for a couple of hundred years. But it's also the Dark Ages because there are no written records. Archaeologists were perplexed by the evidence of mass migrations that took place throughout the ancient world and all around the year 1200 before the current era. The destruction of the cities they left behind bears witness that it was not a peaceful exodus. Whether the cause of the collapse was natural disasters, or the invasion of foreign peoples, or some other event, remains a mystery even today. We will explore this last period of the Bronze Age until its mysterious collapse during the next minutes. Before we go deeper into this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave us a like so that this video can also serve many more people. Picking up where we left off in the previous chapter, we return to Egypt, and we are in the year 1650 before our era, at which time the Hyksos had seized power over all of Egypt and would reign for 100 years. For about 100 years, the Hyksos ruled Lower Egypt, but the Hyksos were unable to maintain control in Upper Egypt. In Upper Egypt, the rulers of the city of Thebes rebelled against the Hyksos rule. Meanwhile, they studied and copied the superior weapons of the Hyksos, captured and bred horses, and prepared for the day they would retake Lower Egypt. Finally, Pharaoh Ahmose I expelled the Hyksos from Egypt. The Hyksos had a lasting effect on the culture and military progress of Egypt. With Ahmose I, the new kingdom of Egypt was born, in the year 1540 before our era, as a newly unified nation under the rule of a king. The period of maximum splendor of civilization would begin, the Second Golden Age of Egypt, at which time it also achieved a great territorial expansion. With the beginning of the period of the New Kingdom, the First Empire of Egypt was born. Egypt was not an empire until the New Empire. That is why we speak of kingdoms when we refer to the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom, since until the New Empire, Egypt had not extended its domains to other peoples. One of the first pharaohs of this period was Thutmose III. Thutmose III came to the throne of Egypt because his father, Pharaoh Thutmose II, and his great royal wife Queen Hatshepsut had not had male descendants. Chance was generous with Egypt, because Thutmose had all the qualities necessary for a good ruler, and one more, his extraordinary military ability, which, added to his unfailing courage, earned him the loyalty of the most powerful army in the Near East. Egypt had great military power during his reign. The Egyptians had achieved from the Hyksos great advances in the art of warfare, in addition to the development of horse-drawn chariots. These chariots would be part of most of the warfare in the last part of the Bronze Age. In 1457 before our era, the rulers of ancient Retinue tried to free themselves from the yoke of Egyptian hegemony. They allied themselves with the kingdom of Mitanni, and with that of Kadesh. Megiddo also joined this alliance. This Canaanite coalition was commanded by the king of Kadesh. Thutmose then gathers a large army of chariots and infantry, numbering 10,000 men, to repel this revolt. They head towards Megiddo, a fortified city near Mount Carmel, in present-day Israel. On the other side of these hills, Pharaoh's enemies wait ready to meet him. The fate of the empire is at stake. The two largest armies ever seen in the ancient world were preparing for combat. Everything would end in the Battle of Megiddo, the first battle in history for which there is a detailed historical account, and it ends with an Egyptian victory, which forced the Canaanites to retreat to the city of Megiddo, where they were later besieged and defeated. With the re-establishment of Egyptian rule in Canaan, Thutmose III began a reign in which the Egyptian empire reached its time of greatest expansion. Thebes would thus become the capital of the most powerful empire in the world. By 1353, Egypt was the most powerful nation in the world. Pharaoh Akhenaten comes to power, who along with his wife Nefertiti, decided to challenge the entire ancient Egyptian faith system, shaking the very foundations of the Egyptian worldview. His ideas brought the nation to the brink of the abyss. Akhenaten's idea was dramatic and revolutionary. To replace the pantheon of 2,000 traditional Egyptian gods with just one, the creator of all, the sun. And he did. For the traditional priests, who had dedicated their entire lives to the old gods, and had been extremely powerful until then, it was a catastrophe. Akhenaten began to acquire dangerous enemies. After suffering several family tragedies, Akhenaten was poisoned. By 1332, Egypt was amid intense internal unrest. It is the moment in which Akhenaten's son takes power. The little 9-year-old Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun acceded to the throne at the age of 8 or 9, under the tutelage of the Vizieri, who would ultimately be his successor. The kingdom was economically weak and in crisis after the disruptive reign of Akhenaten. Diplomatic relations with other kingdoms had been neglected, so Tutankhamun sought to restore them, particularly with Mitanni. It was Tutankhamun who rescued the old gods and restored power and prosperity to Egypt. He began to restore the ancient monuments damaged during the previous period. The priests returned, more powerful than ever. And life returned to normal. No Egyptian pharaoh ever tried to change the established order or challenge the gods again. In this second golden age of Egypt, the nation had the most powerful army in all the Near East. The Hittites of Asia Minor were their greatest enemy. During this stage of the Bronze Age, wars were brutal. The pharaohs participated in battles from chariots that were used like modern tanks. The Hittite infantry could not stand against the chariots and the Egyptian army. But in 1323 before our era, Tutankhamun died at the age of 19. There are no surviving records of the circumstances of Tutankhamun's death, so this matter has generated considerable debate and significant study. Tutankhamun was buried in a tomb that was unusually small for a pharaoh, in the Valley of the Kings. His death may have come unexpectedly, before the completion of a larger royal tomb, forcing his mummy to be buried in a tomb intended for someone of lesser rank. His tomb would remain undiscovered for 3,000 years. Meanwhile, in the West, Greece was under the power of the Mycenaeans. By the year 1600 before the current era, the Mycenaeans had conquered most of Greece. They had reached mainland Greece around 2000 before the current era. They were an Indo-European people who would have come from Epirus and the Balkans. They were a lower civilization than the earlier settlers they supplanted, and spent 400 years assimilating the higher culture of their predecessors. The Mycenaeans were great warriors. By the year 1400 before the current era, they had invaded Crete and subjugated the Minoans. They were enriched by the culture of the Minoans. The city of Mycenae became a center of wealth and power, with a warrior civilization without equal in the Aegean area. The period of Mycenaean splendor goes from the year 1600 to the 1150 before our era. They built imposing palaces. The ruggedness of the terrain in mainland Greece made total control over the Balkan Peninsula impossible. But not the sea. The construction of a powerful fleet allowed them to adventure and conquer overseas, and replace the Minoans as rulers of the Aegean. They established trade contacts with Italy and Sicily, and were part of a trading network in the east. Mycenaean life is also marked by great religiosity. The future Greek pantheon begins to be drawn at this time with the Indo-European deities contributed by the Greeks. Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Artemis, Athena, Hermes, Ares, and Dionysus. At this time, the legendary heroes arose. The great Hector, the giant Ajax, the almighty Achilles, Ulysses, Perseus, and the greatest hero of all, Hercules. But all these heroes and their stories were more myth than history. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, in China, in 1766, the first important dynasty was established, the Shang dynasty. Descendants of the Longshan culture, which emerged in the late Neolithic, around 3000 before the current era, near the middle and lower reaches of the Yellow River. The Shang kings built large walled buildings and imposing temples. A civilization based on agriculture. It is the second dynasty in Chinese history, after the Xia dynasty, but the first whose historical existence is documented. It was succeeded by the Zhou dynasty, the last dynasty prior to the imperial period. Its territorial extension covered the valley of the Yellow River. By 1279 before the current era, Egypt was still the most important nation in the known world. And in that year, the greatest and most powerful pharaoh of the New Kingdom would come to power, which in turn is the peak period of ancient Egypt. Ramses II. Ramses would take Egypt to new heights. His successors and later Egyptians called him Great Ancestor. He was the third pharaoh of the 19th dynasty of Egypt, who ruled for about 66 years, until 1213 before our era. He was the son of Pharaoh Seti I and his great royal wife Tuya. At the age of 15, Ramses already had authority over part of the army. During the first 5 years of his reign, Ramses II carried out 5 successful military actions. A naval battle in the Delta against the attack of Shardana pirates. Expeditions to Asia, as reaction to threats from the Hittites. Conquests in Libya, where he established several colonies and built various fortresses to watch over them. And the greatest battle in history up to that time, the Battle of Kadesh. In Asia Minor, the Hittites were expanding their empire. The Hittite king was a great rival of the Egyptian pharaohs. In the 5th year of his reign, Ramses II decided to cut off the Hittite attacks. A conflict in Egypt arose over control of Kadesh. In 1274, Ramses II led his army north, towards Kadesh. The Battle of Kadesh was the greatest battle of the Bronze Age. It involved 6,000 chariots. Ramses returned triumphant. But in reality, in this war, there was no winner. The Hittites sent representatives to negotiate peace. A formal peace treaty was concluded between the parties. It is the first peace treaty in known history. To close the deal, the Hittite princess was given in marriage to Ramses. The last part of the Bronze Age was a period when diplomacy reigned. The kings sent emissaries to different places. War ceased to be the only solution to conflicts. All kinds of treaties were closed between the kingdoms. Through diplomacy and intermarriage unions, the territorial states of the Near East became more connected than ever. It was an era of great kings, but none more important than Ramses II. He was a great builder. Large buildings were built during his reign. Much of the workforce was made up of Egyptian workers. But there were also Hebrew slaves from the Canaan region. It is believed that it was during the reign of Ramses II that the account of Moses emerged. Moses is the one who would lead the Hebrews back to Israel. The last part of the Bronze Age was a period of important commercial exchanges. All kinds of products were exchanged. The cities became commercial centers. But the civilizations of the Bronze Age were coming to an end. By 1200 before the current era, the Eastern Mediterranean suffered a serious setback. All major cities were affected. The great civilizations of the Bronze Age were collapsing. These, the greatest civilizations of the time, were wiped out. tens of thousands died or were displaced. Everything collapsed. What happened at the end of the 13th century remains a mystery. It was the disaster that appears in Homer's Iliad and in the Odyssey, in the books of Joshua, and in the Old Testament. But what caused this epic destruction is still a mystery. What is believed so far is that the collapse was the product of various environmental phenomena added to invasions by the peoples of the sea. The Near East was affected by droughts. The rivers dried up. The crops were lost. A great volcano erupted in Egypt, affecting the climate of the region. And the peoples of the sea came from the north, and taking advantage of the weaknesses of the different civilizations of the time, they attacked, looted, and destroyed everything in their path. The palaces of Crete and Mycenae were destroyed. For 200 years, the great civilizations of the Bronze Age were destroyed or seriously impacted. Trade between the cities ceased. No written records have been identified for a period of 200 years. Europe and the Middle East entered a dark age. What is undeniable is that something totally new emerged after all. For a couple of centuries we will have the Dark Ages, while the melting pot heats up, but from all this, from the ashes, the phoenix is reborn. New political systems and new civilizations arise. The Greeks emerge, and democracy as we know it will eventually emerge. Whatever caused the collapse of civilizations in the Bronze Age had destroyed a world. There was the twilight of the old and the rise of the new. The chain of events that ended an era and which gave way to the next one is still being investigated. But we will delve into the mysteries about the collapse of the Bronze Age in an upcoming video. The next period in history is the period of the Iron Age that extends from the year 1200 to 600 before our era. The period of emergence of the Greek civilization, of the powerful Athens and Sparta, of the origin of the Phoenician civilization, of the kingdoms of Israel and Judea, of the Assyrian Empire. And it is also the period in which the Roman monarchy begins to emerge. Also, from the year 4000 before our era, much was happening in America. But we will cover all this in future episodes. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to give the video a like so our work can be useful to many more people. And if you enjoy the content, remember to share it. Thanks friends for getting here.